Hey there, I'm Stephanie Reddy. Glad you guys are here with us as we break down the Pacers and what's going to happen this season. Joined by two expert analysts, Steve Smith. Well, that's what you're here for, that, the expertise. Okay. Steve Smith, 14-year NBA vet, all-star, etc. You know his resume. And then we've got Stan Van Gundy, former general manager, former head coach, very experienced in this league. I can't wait to pick you guys' brain about this Pacers team. We're going to start where everyone wants to start. Victor Oladipo. The injury was serious. We don't know when he will come back. There is still not an exact projected date of return. But here's the meat of it. Can he get back to his all-star level of play, Steve?
You know, well, I hope so. You don't never want to see a guy go through that type of injury and can't return. But just because of Instagram and knowing his trainer and watching him, he is putting in the effort to get back to being where he was physically. And obviously it has to translate with his game. But I was so happy for him, Stan and Steph, the way he played his first year in Indiana. You know, he struggled a little bit in Orlando when he first started, and I think he couldn't find his footing in OKC. But that first year in Indiana under Nate McMillan, it seemed like he had found his rhythm of whether I'm a point guard, I'm a two guard, I'm just going to play basketball, and I think that helped him stand.
Exactly right. And look, I think he will get back. It's a matter of when, though. You know, a lot of times coming back off the injury, it may take him the rest of this year. We may not see the real Victor Oladipo until the following season. So that'll be the big thing, I think, with him. And they need him. They've got a lot of good, solid players. But without him, they lack the star power to really be able to contend in the East.
Well, we saw Coach McMillan really put on his coaching hat and got several votes for Coach of the Year because of that, the way they ended the season. And from a coaching perspective, Stan, how important is it going to be for Oladipo to just remain around the team, even if he can't actually get on the floor?
Oh, it's really important, especially with all the new guys they have. You know, he can be there, first of all, and help guys, talking to him about Nate's system, which obviously he's really familiar with. And plus, they have to start to build chemistry because they're not going to have time when he comes back. It's going to be in the season. He's got to jump right in. But Oladipo seems like the type of guy that would be there regardless. He's not going to be one of those guys who wants to go off on his own to rehab.
You know, and I think Nate did a great job. And all coaches, you assess them, game adjustments on the fly. But I think also for him through this injury, how he adjusts the style of play, had them competitive, even though they lost and they got swept. But I thought Nate did a great job without Victor Oladipo.
I mean, we're looking right now at him working out. You mentioned it, Steve Smith, about how because of social media, we all get to kind of peek into the recovery process. He says that he's done his research. He's going to take his time. We're not sure when he'll be able to play, but we do know that he has been back on the basketball court, so that's great news. And, of course, they're going to be smart and not rush him out there too soon. Someone who they do have to rush out right away is Malcolm Brogdon. They made the trade for him in the offseason, and he is a terrific player, one of the smarter players in the NBA, Steve. What will his impact be on this roster?
Well, I think, first of all, I call him the next president of the United States. That's the type of human being he is. He is a guy that is so thoughtful and off the court. He understands how to play the game at every level. He wants to win. He's tough-minded. Coach's dream. And I think, Stan, you know, there are some players you like coaching. This is a coach's dream because whatever you ask of him to do, he will do. And it's about winning. And I think for Nate, it's going to be such a fantastic fit because whatever you say, I need you to play the one, I need you to guard the four, I need you to shoot, I need you to pass. He's willing to do whatever coaches want and for their team to win.
Stan, versatility is one thing, right? He's saying that he can do it, but the fact that he was a willing participant, willing and able to play more than one position, how important is that?
Well, it's everything. I mean, look, you've got a guy in Malcolm Brogdon that is tough, smart, and skilled. I mean, you know, those kind of guys you can do a lot with. I mean, you know, we mentioned in the Open, you know, him being in the 50, 40, 90 club. We have to understand that's a very exclusive club. This isn't a club with a lot of members, okay? It doesn't take long to call the roll in that class. So, I mean, he can really shoot the ball. He is a smart guy who doesn't turn it over. He can guard a lot of positions, and he doesn't make mistakes in big situations, and that's key when you want to be a contender.
That's huge. And when you're talking about a team that's going to be without their main superstar in Oladipo for we're not sure how long, I think also the importance of Malcolm Brogdon off the basketball court, what he brings to the locker room. He has that clean water project that he's working with. How important is that, especially in a smaller community like Indianapolis?
Well, it's always huge when you have guys who care about more than themselves. They're more than just an athlete, and I think that rubs off on a lot of guys, especially younger guys. And I think for him is he has some younger guys, and sometimes you can be a leader, but if you don't have willing followers, it doesn't go. I love Miles Turner. I've been knowing Sabonis since he was young when I played with his dad. So they have a group of guys that get it, Stan.
Yes.
And that's off the court. So that always helps on the court, in my opinion.
There's no question. And I think to your question, Stephanie, I mean, in Indianapolis, they've pretty much always tried to do that, especially since the fight in the Palace.
Yes.
They've really honed in on making sure they have guys that are not only high character on the floor, team players, unselfish, tough, all of that, but off the court will be the kind of people they want in a smaller market.
Absolutely. Steve, you brought up Miles Turner, so we're going to go right to him. Does he have the capability? What is his ceiling? Can he become an elite player in the NBA?
You know, I love Miles because sometimes I'm watching him stand and Steph, and I'm saying, wow, he is dominating this game rebounding. He is dominating this game defensively and blocking shots. And then there's some flashes for me, Stan. I go, they can feature him on the block. Then there's some games I say, wow, he's pretty good in the pick and pop situation. So he gives you a little bit of everything. It's just, I think those 4 or 5 areas, they're not consistent enough at a high level to be an elite center yet. But he does have that capability, in my opinion.
I think he's an elite center defensively. You know, he can really move his feet. He can switch on pick and rolls. He can guard the pick and roll in a drop. He can even blitz if you need him to. I mean, he's got that. He's a shot blocker. Offensively, he really hasn't progressed. And Steve's right. I think he can do a little of everything. Hit the mid-range jumper, even hit a 3 at the time. He's okay on the block. He's decent on the roll, catching it. But I don't know what his identity is if he's going to become a better offensive player. If you look at the best offensive players, there's something they have that makes them elite. I don't know what that is with Miles Turner. And if he doesn't find it, he's still going to be a very good player because of his defense, but I'm not sure he becomes a great offensive player.
Well, if you were coaching him, what would be your recommendation? What is the tool that he needs to try to work on and establish maybe a go-to move or an area on the floor that he should sink his teeth into?
Well, here's the problem, actually, I think, with Miles Turner is where his real strengths are. As Steve mentioned, on the block, you can go to him. And as a mid-range shooter, nobody wants to play like that anymore. So Miles is a throwback guy. He would have been a guy, pick and pop, hit the 17-footer, go down on the block and score. Now they either want him out there shooting the 3, which he's okay with,
improving,
or rolling to the rim. I think if they're going to play a more conventional, by today's standards, game, he's going to have to be a role guy and be great catching and finishing and using his athletic ability.
And I think Stan also, his mindset has to be the same way, like you said, on the defensive end. I don't know if his mindset is to say, hey, I need the basketball, give it to me. I don't know if he has that mindset. And the great players at any level, it's not sometimes the score. I want it to draw the double and make the next play.
But I think Steve's right. And you have to understand, like, guys, how they grew up. And so he was a late developing guy, didn't even start in college his freshman year at Texas. So he's not used to being a star. He's a pretty good player. He develops his skills, but he doesn't have that mentality that Steve's talking about get me the ball and I'll take over the game, because that's not how he grew up playing the game.
Steve, I'm going to ask you real quick. Team USA, how will that impact his game moving forward? You have experience yourself winning a gold in Sydney.
Well, I think for me, just being around it, obviously now, being a part of USA Basketball some years ago, playing in USA Basketball, it's the best thing for all of us basketball junkies, whether you're playing or not. You're around the best of the best, especially for a Miles Turner. You're getting a chance to pick Pop's brain. They're giving you some tidbits, Steve Kerr and all the other coaching staff. And then you get a chance for me, Stan, when I was around, let me see the guy that I'm teammates right now, what's his weaknesses, and I take that and use that in the regular season to my advantage.
I love that part.
Yeah,
a little
absolutely.
sneaky. I love that part.
That's got to be a confidence builder for him to have not only been on the team, but being the starting center on that team throughout the thing. It's got to boost his confidence a little bit. And I think confidence boost might lead to wanting to dominate games more offensively, and they could certainly use that.
Could very well go hand in hand. I'm sure Coach McMillan will appreciate how he'll reap the benefits. All right, you brought up Sabonis earlier, so we're going to talk about him a little bit as we look at the depth chart of these Indiana Pacers. Who's going to play what position? We'll be back. That was a terrific shot, obviously. We're looking at the Pacers' projected depth chart for this upcoming season, and you can see the starters. We're going to dive right in. Steve Smith, Stan Van Gundy, what do you think? What do you think the lineup's going to look like?
Well, I know it won't have Oladipo at the 2 stand to start off, and unfortunately for the Pacers, you know, I look at this lineup, and me and Stan was talking about it earlier. Malcolm can play 1, 2, or 3. Eventually, I think for a contender, for them to be the best they can, I would love to see Malcolm starting at the 3. You know, with Victor Oladipo at the 2 and maybe somebody else running the show. I mean, his position is basketball right now, but I would love to see, you know, either Sabonis probably coming off the bench. I think he brings that energy, that toughness, and he's a go-to guy in the second unit versus I'm still not sure those two guys are effective playing together. I don't think they have anything I just don't know if their games fit in this style and playing together, Sabonis and Turner.
Yeah, I think they can do it at times. I'll actually be surprised, like you would, if that's the way they go to start. Also, because they don't have a lot of frontline depth. Batadze, a lot of people in Eastern Europe speak very, very highly of him. If he's ready to play, maybe they can play him together more, Sabonis and Turner. But otherwise, I think they'll bring Sabonis off the bench. And I think you'll see T.J. Warren slide to the 4. Where he's going to be a very tough matchup as the league has gotten smaller. And T.J. Warren added the 3 to his game last year, changed everything for him. I think it'll allow him to stretch the floor and maybe give Miles Turner a little more room.
Stan, and offense, we know T.J., he's going to score, and he likes to score. How do you think for you as a coach defensively for him, not just particular in this team, for him guarding 3s or guarding 4, where do you see him better defensively? Because he's lacked defensively a little bit. Since college.
A little bit. Yeah, no, he's lacked defensively, and he really hasn't been based in a great defensive system because they've changed coaches so many times in Phoenix that nobody's been able to really get anything installed and had a chance to learn. It's going to be a major challenge for Nate McMillan with both he and Jeremy Lamb on the defensive end. But generally, those kind of guys, if they struggle, are a little bit better playing 4s than they are playing 3s.
You brought up Jeremy Lamb, Coach, and he had his best year of his career last season with the Charlotte Hornets. While he was there, he increased his scoring average every single season. He was given a lot more minutes. Now he's on a different team, different system. Can we expect that to continue to happen in terms of his progression?
I think he's going to score, especially early in the year without Oladipo. I think they'll go to him. I think he'll be one of the guys they feature in the offense. So I think you'll see his offense continue to develop. Again, I keep going back to it. His challenge is going to be at the defensive end. And he's been in great defensive system, and it's still not really there. So I don't know if he's going to be a stopper at the defensive end of the floor.
I think everything with him is confidence. Been watching him play since he was young here in Atlanta. One great thing for him has always been he played with Kemba in college, so they were together in Charlotte. Yeah. Malcolm and Brogdon and also Jeremy play AAU together here in Atlanta, so he has some guys that he's comfortable with. And then I think also for him, his confidence now, watching it last year, he was ready to make big shots, take big shots, and I think Nate will ask him to score a little bit more, especially at the beginning. I think he'll have a good year.
We saw that huge shot that he made, remember, against the Raptors right at the buzzer. That was tremendous. So he certainly has it in him to take those. So we'll see how that goes as that roster continues to gel. Someone else on the roster we haven't talked about yet, one of the Holiday brothers is featured with the Indiana Pacers. What do you think his contribution will be, especially in the beginning without Oladipo?
Well, look, they've got 2 Holiday brothers on that team.
That's
they've got Aaron and Justin, and Justin can score the ball. Aaron Holiday showed flashes last year. He didn't get a lot of time. I think the big thing for him is going to be, can he beat out T.J. McConnell for those minutes? T.J. McConnell's not as talented as Aaron Holiday, but he's a very good player, better than people think, and they'll be fighting for minutes. If he gets time, I think we'll see him develop and be a pretty good player.
I think, Stan, you know, you have your brother and Jeff. But if I had my brother and we're on the same team, I feel a little bit more confident right now.
Yes, absolutely, and comfortable.
He's got to be extremely comfortable having, especially one of your older brothers playing with you right now. That definitely helps. A second year in the league, he just has to be better because anything going on, hey, here's my big brother to come in. And I think having your big brother, because I know if I play with my big brother, he could get on me differently, Stan.
Absolutely.
And I won't take it as personal. Yeah. He's going to probably grab him on the bench. I think he's going to have a coach within a coach with Justin, I think he's going to definitely play better.
Very good point. All right. Well, we're going to have a little bit more as we continue. Nate McMillan, as we've already talked about, continuing on to look at the Indiana Pacers. And Steve and Stan, check out this plane. Steve, did you have anything like this during your playing days?
When I started off commercial, so I'm a little jealous. But I did play for the Portland Trailblazers, Stan. When I got traded there, that plane was unbelievable.
Yeah, all the planes now are unbelievable. Yes. That's the thing, and this is a step beyond. So, I've never traveled like that.
Neither. Noted, everyone at home. Feel free to invite us along on any of those special excursions you may have. I'm Stephanie, he's Steve, he's Stan. We're here to help you break down the Indiana Pacers looking ahead to their season. Head coach Nate McMillan. We touched on it earlier. He did an extraordinary job, in my opinion, to end that season, losing an all-star in Victor Oladipo. Still ended up in the playoffs. They got swept, but it was an excellent showing. Stan, I would love to hear your perception on the job he did down the stretch.
He did what Nate McMillan has done since he's been in the league. This guy's one of the most underrated coaches in the league because he doesn't promote himself at all. There's no, this is the Pacer way or, any of that. He just coaches basketball, but his teams never beat themselves. Yeah. So if you look at last year, they're third in the league defensively. They're a low turnover team. They get good shots and they make them. They play slow because he didn't have a ton of talent and they grind it out. They're in every game. And even though they got swept in the playoffs, those games were competitive games. They fought Boston hard. You play against Nate McMillan's teams, it's always going to be difficult. Always.
Steve, he ended up fourth in Coach of the Year voting. Mm-hmm. Last year was a tough year, though, for the head coaches. There were lots of great jobs. What did you think of how he did in the absence of Victor Oladipo? I'm
with Stan. He's been doing this for such a long time. And I think sometimes as fans out there, a narrative of coaches comes, he's a defensive coach. You have to coach the style that you think best fits your team. And I think Nate for so long he's a defensive coach. He's a defensive coach. There's nothing wrong with being a defensive coach. I think the one thing right now is, and when you saw Nate have a team that got up and down in pace, you just wasn't used to that, having a team run with pace at times. Like you were saying, when Victor Oladipo, they back down. You have to adjust. And I think the same thing is going to be this year. What style you play before Victor Oladipo, and then what style you play when Victor Oladipo is inserted back in the lineup.
I know when you look at their roster and how it's made up, he has more pieces probably than he's had in recent years. What are your expectations for potentially the style of play, Stan?
Well, they've got more offensive pieces. They added Brogdon, they added Jeremy Lamb, who averaged 15 a game. They added T.J. Warren, who averaged 18 a game. Yep. So he's got more offensive pieces. I actually think Nate's challenge this year might be to get some of those guys to guard. Brogdon's a great defender, okay, but Jeremy Lamb and T.J. Warren, not so much. And, he might struggle at that end a little bit. So I think that might be his challenge when everybody's back. But early in the year, I think the challenge is going to be, and we'll talk about their depth chart in a minute, but sort of who plays where and how do you mix and match the pieces he has.
Stan, I have a question for you. We look at it, how hard is it not to have your best player? Sometimes you have injuries and you got to adjust no matter what. How hard is it going into the season without your best player? He's not ready until whether it's January or February to put in a style for these guys, knowing you're going to have to adjust when Victor comes back.
Yeah, that's really hard. Because training camp, as you know, Steve, is where you get everything in and you build the identity of your team. And so they're building their identity when they don't have their best player. And then in the middle of the season somewhere where you're going to have a day or two, boom, Victor's ready to play. And now we're running different stuff and we're playing a little bit different, a little faster, maybe roles adjust for guys. That's difficult. But if there's anybody who can manage it, it'll be a guy with Nate McMillan's experience. He's been at this a long time and he's had to do these things for a long time.
Well, we look forward to seeing what he pulls out of the hat this season with the Indiana Pacers. We still have more to come as we look ahead. Miles Turner with the slam. More or less in terms of wins. We'll see. Here we are again, checking out the Pacers. Here's a good question for you, Steve and Stan. Do they need more pace?
They're just not going to play with more pace. So that's just not, that's just not the way Nate's going to play the game. They're going to grind it out with those big guys and with good defense. and they're going to play the way they play. Look, they don't turn the ball over. They get good shots, and they make them, but they're sort of anti-today's analytic movement. They don't get a lot of layups. They don't get a lot of free throws. They make their threes, but they don't shoot a lot of them. And so, they're sort of old school basketball, just like their coach, but they're darn good at it.
Yeah, I don't think so. And then look at their personnel. And you look at Nate, you had Collison last year who could push the pace with Oladipo and Tyreek Evans. Those guys are not there, and Oladipo coming back. I don't think they can play faster than what they played last year.
All right, here's the question, the money question, literally. More or less wins this season than 47.5, keeping in mind they won 48 last year.
I'm going to say no, and it's nothing against the Indiana Pacers. It's just Victor Oladipo, their best player's not there, Stan. And timetable, what they're saying is January. And
it's rough.
By the time you get to January, I think it's going to be too much to make up enough time to get to 47 wins.
I agree. I've got less on that. I think they're going to be in the low 40s, somewhere right around 500, and fighting for those last couple of playoff spots. I think there's only 9 teams to me in the East fighting for 8 spots, so they're going to be in that battle, but I don't see them anywhere near 47 wins.
What do you think, Steve? In the playoffs? Out?
I mean, they're going to be fighting. If Victor can come back in January, and obviously how he can play, but I think they'll be hovering around 9.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Steve Smith, Stan Van Gundy. I'm Stephanie Reddy. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll see you next time.